Hey, welcome to Hell in the Hallway with your host, Billy. I am so happy to see you again. I'm glad you're able to stop by. I am so excited about today's podcast because I was inspired by a sermon I heard earlier, and it was on Jeremiah 12. But today's podcast on the art of war. How are you fighting the battles of your life? Right? So let's first start with the actual verse. So it reads, "If you have raced with men on foot and they have worn you out, how can you compete with horses?" Ooh, that is powerful. How can you compete with horses if you are already worn by the small? How are you even going to manage what is yet to come? Then it goes on to read, "If you stumble in safe country, how will you manage in the thickest by the Jordan?" That verse really spoke to me, and I hope it speaks to you. It was a gut punch, right? I felt like God was saying, if you don't stop complaining, Jeremiah, seriously? Do you know what I have for you? You gotta be able to handle this because there's more for you, right? So, today's podcast is on the art of war and how are you fighting your battles, right? So let's start with kind of breaking up these components that the verse talked about: foot soldiers and horses. That's what we're going to break apart today, and we're going to connect it to how we fight our battles, right? So foot soldiers, they are built up for close combat, right? They carry guns and knives, and their overall point is to kill or maim face to face, right? And they also come in high numbers. There's a lot of them, right? They're designed to overwhelm the person. They're designed to overwhelm the country, whoever it is that they're fighting, right? And if we're not careful, we don't realize that foot soldiers, they're not where the large part of the war is, not at all. So what are some examples of foot soldier battles? Maybe we're worried about people who are gossiping about us. Maybe we're struggling with somebody who we feel should love us the way we love them. Maybe we're comparing ourselves to other people on social media, right? Maybe we're struggling with, we feel that people don't quite understand us as we are. Maybe we got people hating on us a little bit for what we do have. Or maybe we tripping because we don't have what we think we should have. We think we don't have what we actually deserve. Those could be some examples of our own foot soldiers, right? And so what ends up happening, we end up creating sand. No. Let me rephrase that. It is sand. We don't create it. It is sand. It is a piece of sand. But what we tend to do with that is that we create a beach from it. And so what is that? What do I mean by that? In clinical terms, we create a narrative. We tell ourselves a story about ourselves in that particular context of that situation or that circumstance. And then we have an emotional response to it. You know what all that is? That is energy. We give these particular foot soldiers space and place in our hearts. Yes, we do. And when we do that, we are paralyzed. And when we're paralyzed, we can't operate in our God-given destiny. Because honestly, these foot soldiers have no real power. They only have the power we decide to give it. See, in reality, nobody can take your power. People can only take what you freely hand to them, right? So we have to think about that. We give people power over who we are on a regular basis. So people have far too much credit in our lives, right? So those are our foot soldiers. Now let's look at these horses, right? Horses used in war, they were lightweight, they were medium weight, and they were heavyweight. Lightweight horses are used for speed, endurance, and agility. Medium horses in war were used for carrying chariots. They were capable of holding multiple people on this chariot, and they even carried people who wore armor. Now, the big horses, the real heavyweight ones, they were the strongest in war. See, they carried the weapons, the supply wagons and armored knights. They supplied the war. And we're going to talk about that heavy one because that Ooh, when I really got to processing what that was, I started to notice what my heavyweight horses in my life were. And I hope you get to recognize yours too. So here we are focusing on foot soldiers, and we're battling, and we're weary from that, right? We are missing, because we have not paying attention that there are greater things to come. There are greater battles to be fought. And guess what? We're not supposed to be fighting those battles by ourselves. No, we're not. But if we're so busy on the front lines with the sand, with the foot soldiers, we're too weary to deal with what the real war is. We can't even align ourselves to the one who can help us through that, because we're too busy creating narratives about these foot soldiers. And then what do we sometimes do with that? We live in petty land. Pettiness made a comeback. I could not believe when petty became something to be proud of. People were on petty teams. People were pulling out their petty panties. It was petty this, petty that. I was shocked, because pettiness is only for small things. If you are willing to engage in petty behavior, that means you're willing to give energy to small things, right? So again, let's look at these horses, right? The light horse, designed for speed and agility. These are these circumstances that kind of catch you off guard, right? Maybe the loss of a job, maybe a sudden loss of a relationship that you were connected to, friends, romantic or otherwise. Maybe a sudden change in income, right? Because that's something that happens fast. Then there's the medium horse. That's designed for carrying chariots and holding more than two people, or people who wore armor, right? These are circumstances of people who actively seek to destroy you because you are showing your light. Wow. And here's the thing. When the positive part of showing your light is that you give permission for other people to show theirs, but it also has a dark side. See, you can give people permission to show theirs, or the very fact that you are showing your light is demonstrating to them that they're not showing theirs. Wow. What do people do when they recognize that their own deficits through your light? They start talking about your light. They start, I don't even want to use the word hating on, that's such an overused word, but they start to really project their deficits on you. Those are your medium sized horses. And here's the part that is kind of sad. These will come from people you love. See, people who love you can sometimes talk you out of your destiny because they have not chosen to seek theirs out. And here's the part that's terrible. They're not actually trying to hurt you. No, they actually think they're doing this out of love, when in fact, they're doing this out of lack, not out of love. The last horse is the heavyweight horse, right? Woo! This horse is the most dangerous, and it is the slowest. So we might, if it's the slowest, we might think, I can get to that one. I can hurt that one. I don't need God for that. I don't need that. But no, that's the dangerous one. It's the one that we tend to underestimate. And here's the thing. It's not even the horse that actually fights the battle. It's not even the horse that is seen first. Usually this horse is actually trailing behind the foot soldiers, the light horses, and the medium-sized horses. No, it's the last. So we don't consider it a real threat. These carry in physical war, they're going to carry the guns, the heaviest armor, knights, and supplies to feed the foot soldiers. But listen carefully. Do you know who the heavy horses are? It's you. The heavy horse is you. In the horse lies the supplies that are designed to destroy your spirit, your emotional space, and your psychological space. It's your insecurities. It's the narrative that you created about yourself. It's the story that you're constantly telling yourself about who you are based on the circumstances that you have gone through. That's that heavy horse. And it's we don't even pay it any attention because why? It's walking slow. It don't look like it can be any real threat, but it has the most threats. Because in that horse is messaging. It is the messaging that we have accepted as true. And let's say we've accepted messaging that we are less than. right? Let's say we've accepted that type of messaging. Somebody who feels unworthy or feels like they're less than or deserves a backseat to life, they will always seek out the back seat. They will always seek out the back door. You ain't even got to tell them to go out the back. They will seek it out themselves. And guess what? If there's no back door present, they will create it, because it's by their nature that they seek it out the back door. That they seek for something below who they really are. Isn't that crazy? You know, even in all this COVID and all this quarantine thing that we're in, I was reading this article about, of course, COVID, and it was talking about the various differences of how it operates in a person. See, the virus itself is the same. It's not the virus, it's the host. And that's the same with us. See, it's the host. When it comes to the virus, there are multiple types of symptoms when it comes to COVID that can demonstrate, right? Some people have strokes. Some people have these significant pneumonia and die. There's so many variances when it comes to COVID. And what they started to realize is that it is not the virus, it's the host. So a lot of us will have a lot of similar circumstances, but we have responded very differently to those circumstances. That's host conversation. That's the host. So we have to recognize what story we're telling ourselves about ourselves. Remember the podcast, Right Book, Wrong Story? Well, it was all about that. It was all about understanding that although the facts are accurate, the story is the one we create. See, it's not the circumstances. It is the story we tell ourselves about those circumstances that actually matter, right? God tells us a story about our circumstances. And if we go through the clinical process, we can help develop a story that's far more effective for your life. And I need to talk about that for a minute, right? I got these out just for today, for this. This is the DSM-5. This is what I use to do diagnosis, right? This is the Holy Bible. These two don't have to operate separately. Just because you're seeing a counselor doesn't mean you don't have faith in God. Doesn't mean you won't believe God will be there to heal while your clinician help make you whole. These things don't have to operate independent of one another. They can operate together. Make sure you find a clinician who can actually work this process with you in a clinical and spiritual way. There's a lot of clinicians out here. We have to recognize in this art of war, we have to figure out how we are fighting the battles of our life. Let's remember what that verse said again, because it spoke to me. If you have raced men on foot and they have worn you out, how can you compete with horses, my friend? If you stumble in safe country, how will you manage the thickest by the Jordan? Do not expend your energy on the foot soldiers of this world. No, they're not worth your time. Align yourself with God in order to work through the lightweight horses, the middleweight, and the heavyweight horses. And make sure, if you so choose, which I hope you do, choose clinical resources to assist you in that process. Recognize that in this art of war, it is not about the virus. It is about the host. And remember, it is not always about the destination. It is also about revelation. Thanks again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next time.